Being good at hiring is key to your dealership's survival. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about mindset, about hiring, what to look for, and what to avoid. Because finding good candidates for jobs in this industry is hard. All too often in this industry, we make costly mistakes in hiring that costs our dealership's business. So, let's talk about making better hiring decisions going forward in this episode of Down Payment.
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Check out all our podcast content on our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X. Welcome back. So in this episode, we're going to talk about hiring and fundamentally, what are we looking for in our hiring interviews? Hiring is really tough in this industry. This industry is got a culture that kind of shapes it, that can lead us down difficult paths, that cause us to hire people that have problems that they learned from other dealerships. The bad habits that other dealerships can infect your dealership with can be a very adverse proposition for your dealership. And one of the things that we want to do in our dealerships are to run our dealerships better than our competition. And we're not running our dealerships better than our competition if we are hiring the exact same people they are and bringing in and importing the bad habits, the bad procedures, the bad policies that our competition has. So we've talked about different angles of solving this problem. We've talked about training. We've talked about emotional intelligence. We've talked about de-escalation. We've talked about procedures and policies and how to build those. We've talked about change management. But in this episode, we're going to talk about the hiring part of that equation and why hiring the right fit is so important for your dealership's survival. So hiring issues, we see dealers that have this tendency to hire the same personality as they have. And their managers will have the tendency to hire the people that are like them. And we want to make sure that we're not just hiring a clone army. We don't want to hire people that talk to people in the exact same way that we do and can only reach the people that we're effective at reaching. We want to have a culture of people that bring creative perspectives, that have different life experiences, that can reach different customer demographics better. And so that type of hiring is super important. We don't want to build a little clone army. We want to build a team where everyone contributes something of value to this dealership. Now, you are looking for people that potentially have certain skills that you need for your dealership, but you need something broader to make an employee a good fit. And that includes stuff like attitude, values, and emotional intelligence. These aren't things that we can easily teach. These are things that you want to be able to screen in your hiring process right at the onset. If you make a bad hire, that bad hire can affect your performance numbers, but it can also have deeper harm to your business, affecting your culture, morale, and trust within your dealership. Whereas on the other side, if you get a really good hire, it boosts the whole team. So make it clear that when hiring, your goal is to find candidates that not only have the right skill sets to fill, but also align with your dealership's culture, values, and attitude, and helps promote a strong, cohesive team that can deal with adversity and difficulties that are inherent in this industry. So hiring the right person, you want to protect your culture from being compromised. You're going to want to reduce internal chatter and conflict and burnout. You want to have a hire that supports your long-term growth and stability. If this person has a history of only being in a job for 30 days at a time, they're not going to be probably a good fit as far as driving long-term growth and stability. You want someone that can be a team player for at least a medium-term perspective. Now, you want someone that is a cultural fit, that has some emotional intelligence, that has accountability, and has integrity. Think of it as like a driver's license. Most people have a driver's license. Some people have points against it. Some people are excellent drivers. Some are reckless. Some are overly cautious. Having a license alone doesn't tell you how someone drives. A resume by itself also doesn't tell you how someone actually performs. You're going to want to be able to dig deeper in your hiring process to figure out if this person is a good fit. To do that, you need to look beyond the interview sales pitch. You want to have a conversation that is a two-way conversation. It shouldn't be an interrogation per se. It should be a back and forth conversation between the hiring manager, which might be you as the dealer, or it might be one of your managers, that challenges the candidate. I see cases where the manager does almost all the talking in an interview. That is a terrible thing to have. You want to make sure that the candidate is at least speaking 50, 60, 65% of the time over the course of the interview. You want to be able to see how they think, how they respond, and how they listen. Things to look for. Look for coachability. Coachability, especially over experience in this industry. There are a lot of people with a lot of tremendous experience, but the downside or the side effect of that experience is it makes them very difficult to coach. Ask them questions such as, what feedback have you received recently? How did you respond to it? How do you respond to feedback? How do you change or improve? What did you change to improve based on that feedback? Ask them for scenarios and recent scenarios where they've had to change based off of a job demand or something their manager came back to them for. Look for things like ownership over defensiveness. If they get really defensive really easily, that's a bad sign. Someone who has some comfort admitting mistakes and someone that shows willingness to grow and has some self-awareness. Individuals who are uncoachable are going to be a tough fit for your dealership. They're going to import whatever bad habits they come in with, and they're not going to be able to overcome those. Next thing, look for accountability and consistency. Your top performers take responsibility, they accept feedback, and they focus on improvement as opposed to giving excuses. So your red flags here are blaming customers, managers, or past dealerships, over-explaining failures without having any ownership for them. So if you ask them for a time where they failed to meet expectations or they had some sort of failure associated with their performance, if they were fired from a previous job, if they only have excuses and they can't take ownership of what they did wrong, that's a bad sign. And then look for emotional intelligence and people skills. This is a very people-focused business, and especially in sales, we're looking for people that can connect with people first and foremost, rather than solely looking at the product or themselves. So someone that has some empathy, some emotional awareness, some body language and listening skills. You're going to really want to be able to test those through the interview process. Question that might be a good one to ask is, as a customer, what makes a salesperson trustworthy to you? Listen for integrity-based answers. Someone with some long-term perspective as far as how they reach out to customers and move them down the sales funnel. Someone who is focused on building a relationship rather than using some cheap sales training techniques. Be cautious of people that come across as too aggressive or manipulative, really relying on really manipulative sales tactics. We've talked in prior episodes at how those are a bad idea in the long term for your business. And people that use the closing language without really understanding where their customer is at and caring about it. And then the next thing to look for is alignment with your leadership and culture. You want to find someone that fits with the way that you lead, the way you coach, and you can see being able to meet your expectations. So that's where the two-way conversation is really important. You want to provide some clarity to build trust early on so that you are having an understanding of what that candidate for the job is like, and that they have conversely an understanding of what you're looking for. And if there's alignment there, then you've got a good fit. Now, you want to get the proper balance of experience versus inexperience for the job. A lot of our dealerships don't have the training sophistication and capability in-house to take someone in every single job in your dealership and bring them fully up to speed to perform the job. You're often looking with someone that already has some degree of skills developed. You're not necessarily looking for someone with too much experience that can't be coached into the job properly, but you don't want someone with too little experience that doesn't have the right skill set. You want to find where you get a little bit of a sweet spot. They are confident but humble, skilled but coachable, driven but respectful. Skills can be taught, but we want to make sure that prerequisites are met. Now, the mindset, while you can have a dealership culture that trains mindset, you want to have someone that is a good ballpark fit, that is going to be able to adapt to your dealership's culture. If you can use these principles, you're going to be able to screen candidates better and find better candidates that drive your dealership forward and avoid hiring mistakes that are costly. So this is a skill to work on. I want to hear your comments about hiring and things that you found help you find better candidates. And with that, it's been another episode of Down Payment. Go sell some cars. Check out our podcast on all our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.